12-gate treatise. Translated, with introductory essays, comments, and notes by Hsueh-li Cheng, 1982. 6. Identity or difference. In this chapter, Nãgãrjuna continues to examine critically the functioning of characterization or description of things. He argues that a conceptual description of reality is impossible by showing that the adequate relation between the characterizable and characteristics cannot be established. Nãgãrjuna's analysis is concerned with what Western philosophers would call substance-attribute relations. He questions the view that a thing or object consists of a substance and attributes. He points out that the so-called substance and attributes are empty, for they are neither identical nor different from each other.
Linguistically, the problem of characterization is the problem of predication. In this and previous chapters, Nãgãrjuna is questioning the adequacy of our language or verbal statements. In both metaphysical and ordinary uses of language, a statement usually consists of a subject and a predicate. Nãgãrjuna wants to show that the relationship between the subject and the predicate cannot be adequately established. Hence, predication is really impossible. Again, all things are empty. Why? Characteristics and the characterizable are neither the same nor different. If they are neither the same nor different, how can both be established? Characteristics and the characterizable are neither identical nor different from each other. If their sameness and difference cannot be established, neither can be established. Therefore, characteristics and the characterizable are empty. Since characteristics and the characterizable are empty, all things are empty.
Question: Characteristics and the characterizable have always been established. Why can they not be established? You say that characteristics and the characterizable are neither the same nor different. Now you should say that the characteristics of anything are either identical to, or different from, the characterizable, or things may be partially characteristics and partially the characterizable. For example, the characteristic of consciousness I is being conscious. Without the act of being conscious there is no consciousness. The characteristic of sensation is sensing. Without the act of sensing there is no sensation. So characteristics are identical to the characterizable. The Buddha says that the cessation of desire is called the characteristic of nirvana. Desire is created as rava. Cessation is non-created anusrava. A believer has three characteristics: he wants to be with good men, he is eager to hear truth, and he wants to give alms. These three are the karmas of body and mouth, and belong to outward appearances. But belief is of the mind and belongs to mental activities. Here characteristics and the characterizable are different from each other.
Right view is a characteristic of the Eightfold Noble Path, and is partially the same as the Eightfold Noble Path. Origination, duration and destruction are the characteristics of created things. They are partially the same as created things. Thus the characterizable is partially identical with characteristics. Comment: the Eightfold Noble Path is composed of 8 factors, namely, right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness and right concentration. The 8 factors are not to be followed and practiced one after the other in numerical order, but to be exercised and developed simultaneously. They are all linked together and each helps the cultivation of the others. So the opponent claims that right view is a characteristic of the Eightfold Noble Path and is also partially the same as the Eightfold Noble Path, and argues that the characterizable is partially identical to characteristics. So characteristics are either the same as, or different from, or partially the same as the characterizable. Your thesis that since sameness and difference cannot be established, characteristics and the characterizable cannot be established, is untenable.
Answer: your thesis that characteristics are the characterizable, just as with consciousness and so forth, is not tenable. Why? Because that which can be known through characteristics is called the characterizable, what has been used in knowing is called characteristics. But a thing cannot know itself. For example, a finger cannot touch itself and an eye cannot see itself. Therefore your thesis that consciousness is both a characteristic and the characterizable is untenable. Again, if characteristics are the same as the characterizable, there is no distinction between them. If we make a distinction, we should not say that they are the same. Again, if characteristics are the same as the characterizable, cause and effect would be one. Why? Characteristics are cause and the characterizable, effect, two are one. But in fact they are not one. Therefore, it is not right to say that characteristics and the characterizable are the same.
Your thesis is that characteristics and the characterizable are different from each other is also untenable. You say that the cessation of desire is the characteristic of nirvana, not that desire is the characteristic of nirvana. If it is said that desire is the characteristic of nirvana, then the characteristic is different from the characterizable. If it is said that the elimination of desire is the characteristic of nirvana, then it should not be said that the characteristic is different from the characterizable. You also say that a believer has three characteristics. But in fact, a believer and the three characteristics are not different from each other. For they are related in such a way that, if there is no belief there are no three events. Therefore, characteristics and the characterizable cannot be different. Moreover, if characteristics and the characterizable are different, a characteristic can have other characteristics, and there would be an infinite regress, but this is impossible. Therefore, characteristics and the characterizable cannot be different.
Question: just as the light can illuminate itself and other things, so characteristics can characterize themselves and other things. Answer: your example of the light has been refuted previously when we discussed three created characteristics. Besides, you seem to contradict your own former view. Previously you said that characteristics and the characterizable were different, but now you say that characteristics can characterize themselves and other things. This is untenable. Again, you say that the characteristics are part of the characterizable. This is untenable. Why? Because the meaning lies in sameness or in difference. But the meanings of sameness and difference have been refuted previously. So you should know that the view that the characteristics are part of the characterizable should be refuted. Thus, characteristics and the characterizable of various causal conditions are neither identical nor different from each other. There is no other possibility. Therefore, characteristics and the characterizable are both empty. Since both are empty, all things are empty.